Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. Well, first up, joining me this week is someone earning Harpin cap number 71, and he has double cause for celebration this weekend, as he is the newly crowned Harpin Prediction League champion. Welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
I'm going to be modest in my victories. So snatching Keane in the last week is not to rub salt in wounds, but I was lucky. It was a bit of luck. It was a bit of luck. That's
There
all.
was literally, going into the final week, there was literally point zero 0.08 of a point
Well,
in it
there's a
between them.
fine
It
line
was
between
ridiculous.
genius and madness.
There you go. There you go.
Love it.
And also here is someone making his 42nd appearance. He was the guy who finished an agonizingly close second in the prediction league. But I have a feeling the result in Croker just about made up for that. Hello once again to Mr. Keenan Willor.
Thanks for having us back, Jeff. Yeah, to be honest, delighted with the Leinster win, and yeah, if I was going to go out, I went out at the top, swinging in the brew, and couldn't have been to a more fitting opponent.
I think you mentioned that it could have been possibly those late Glasgow tries last week that made a difference. Was it?
It was what made a difference going into the final round. But to be honest, Tom got a clean win then on the last weekend, and I'm actually delighted that he doesn't have that bitter taste of Glasgow tries in his mouth to go with the
exactly
coming out of the sup in the cup.
You don't want any bit of that for sure. And also, by the way, since I have Keno, he's also a host / producer for the excellent Mother Ruckers, the Irish Women's Rugby podcast. And you've just kicked off your second season, am I right?
Yeah. Kicked off season 2 of Mother Rucker, the only Irish women's rugby podcast. And the first episode is, if I may say so myself, a cracker. We've got Jane Clossy and Neve Noddy O'Dowd live out of Ireland camp, chatting pre-season chaos, first cap stories, and what really goes on behind the scenes in Ireland camp. So it's called Pitch Perfect, that episode, and give it a listen. You'll see why. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, you definitely want to subscribe to that. There's a World Cup just around the corner, and that's exactly where you want to be to listen to everything to do with that. In fact, I'm doing all these plugs so I can get the Chewy on as well onto Harpin maybe for a quick chat before the World Cup gets going. But we'll move on to that at a later date. Okay, listen, lads, let's crack on with our feature match of the week. Here's a generic 50-word summary of what happened on the day. Leinster Rugby defeated Vodacom Bulls 32-7 to win the BKT URC title at Croke Park, attracting a record crowd for an Irish final. Key tries were scored by Conan, Barrett, Vanderfleer, and Gunn. Leinster's strong defence and strategic play secured their first trophy in 4 years. Now, the lads have picked out some key themes from the match. We're going to start with Tom. A couple of weeks ago, he was on harping about Leinster's kicking game against the Scarlets, and once again, it played a big part in the final.
Yeah, just harping back to the Scarlets game, I suppose it's a sort of 20-second recap. I sort of bemoaned the fact that we seem to be between two tactics against the Scarlets. We had our kicking game and it would get us into a good position in the game. And then for other reasons, we sort of went away from it. And there was a lot of offloading out of the back of the tackle, just a lot of not exact enough around that sort of detail, led to a lot of messy ball and scrambling on the deck. And then as soon as it tightened up again, Leinster would resort to kick. And I'm not just saying we're a kick-only team. We're obviously a lot more than that. But we kick for a reason in different parts of the field and for different results. But if Scarlets was a work in progress, I think they definitely fine-tuned it over the last couple of weeks against Glasgow and obviously then the Bulls at the weekend. Even with the late change at 9, which is Gibson Park is so key to part of our kicking game. There is kicking options throughout that back line. We know Sam can kick. We know James Lowe with his exits, Jamie Osborne when he's playing, Jimmy O'Brien obviously is a decent exit, Jordy Barrett, who we used a lot on the weekend. But Gibson Park is key for those box kicks to sort of drop in between that initial defensive line and the back three, and he's so good at just dropping it in the right place. You see a lot of those kicks just dropping outside the 22, and it's sort of forcing errors. And but I think where Leinster really improved over the last few weeks is the mix up of our kicking. There was lots of grubber kicks, lots of those kicks that I mentioned, even though Luke McGrath came in at the last minute and bar the first one where he kicked it out in the full, He had a very good game from the boot. He was just dropping it right on the money and making it very, very difficult for the Bulls. The Bulls weren't sure whether to sit back. You could see them stepping back towards their 22 because they were half expecting either Prendergast to go long with a spiral or give it to Barrett, he'd go long, or even if James Lowe has been used as a left-footed exit. So the Bulls back 2/3 were worried about how far up to come, and that left a big gap between the Bulls, sort of, you can imagine, in 12 or 13 men across that defensive line, and the 2 or 3 hanging back. And Leinster really exploited that space. There was some talk after the game, and I know Keane will talk about the physicality shortly, about targeting the opposition's strengths. But one of the, and obviously the scrum was one of the main talking points pre-game. But Bulls' kicking game was outstanding last year. If you've harked back to last year's semi-final, it really was the difference between us winning and losing the game. Willie LaRue really gave us a torrid time, and he targeted that area. We were worried about the altitude and kicks going 60, 70 metres. And I can't recall exactly who was at the back that day, but I know Jimmy O'Brien was one, I think, probably James Lowe. And we got caught in that middle space between the initial defensive line and where our back three. So in some ways, we turned it back on the Bulls this weekend. We took good learnings, sign of a good team, sign of a good coaching team. We took good learnings from that experience. And maybe over the last few weeks, even though I had frustrations in between the Northampton loss and maybe the Scarlets game about how exact we were around it, and how we probably weren't sticking on script, so to speak, because we did speak about after I think it was the Glasgow game as well, or the observation was that they were given not a hairdryer at half time, but really told to stick to script. And you tell a lot of the team, a lot of Leinster the last few weeks, when they come out at half time, they were really on script about kicking. It didn't matter if it was those Gary Owen bombs just dropping outside the 22 or those little box kicks over the top that we spoke about. Luke McGrath did. They seem to be more focused on the mind. But I think the difference this week was, and coupled along with the conditions, we really did focus in on it this week. And bar 1 or 2 hours, I know Sam tried a crossfield kick that went probably at the wrong time. But when you're only counting 1 or 2 instances over the course of 80 minutes on poor kicks, a lot of the kick, 42 kicks, I think, in the game. And looking at it, 40 of them were decent kicks, and I think we'd have posited an outcome on, or as in getting the ball back a phase after, on nearly 3/4, which is unbelievable. And it doesn't work without a good kick chase, and obviously that's probably why Ryan Baird is to the fore the last couple of weekends. He's just a real terrier when it comes to chasing down. So kicking is good, and it's not, as I mentioned before, it's not kicking for kicking's sake. The best teams in the world, France with their fancy backline, as soon as they go 2 or 3 phases in midfield, if they're not going anywhere, they kick. And it was all about putting pressure for us on Bulls and giving them, really a thorough time trying to exit out of the half, out of their own half or outside their own 22. And I think all bar one occasion when I looked to rewatch the match, we lost the kicking duel. There was one where I think Willie LaRue put in a really good kick. It just landed about maybe a metre or 2 outside our try line. Jimmy O'Brien had to scarper back, and he kicked it just beyond the 22. That is the only time in the whole game where we lost yardage in the kicking duel against a very good kicking team as well. As I alluded to already, the Bulls tore us apart last year with their kicking game. So we were up against a very good kicking team. This is going head to head with a team that are well used to doing to others what we did to them the weekend. So I think that was a sign of how well A, our execution had to be, and how B, we did it. Obviously one of the highlight kicks of the weekend was, and you can, people watch back of the game, for Geordie Barrett's try, you can see McGrath lining up the little box, and but Barrett behind him, his left ear, giving him the call, and Tommy O'Brien knows what the call as well is, and it's just perfectly executed. Yeah, you make your own luck with a little bit of a hack through, but at the end of the day, you had 2 Bulls defenders running into each other, and we all know, Geordie ran through and did like any good Mead man and finished under the Davin stand with a score. Yeah, we are still claiming him. We are still claiming him down in County Meath. But it was just maybe it was a work in progress the last few weeks. I know Leinster have been, I call it an off-ball team. this season, which is, the term for we prefer to not have possession. But I think that's too harsh. I think we kick at certain times, and once we get into the opposition 22, our attack then comes alive, and you could see Sam trying to get into attack and play then as soon as what you're trying to do is force an error, get into broken play, and then really attack those spaces. And that's where Leinster upped the ante. There was one instance where we put a nice box kick through. Again, Jordy Barrett got up with a lovely, nearly like a basketball flick back. I think it was Thomas Clarkson may have caught it on the run. And, if you freeze frame that, you can see how disorganised the Bulls' defence is. And it might have been that instance where Sam kicked it away, his one-ish poor kick of the game, where he kicked it to trying to crossfield to Tommy O'Brien. But that's what it's generating. It's generating broken defence. It's a way of, defences are so good these days, it's a way of sort of breaking up the defence. And so, yeah, kudos to the players and kudos to the coaching team. They just, fine-tuned what they needed to do over the last few weeks and executed it, which is the key thing. Just executed when they made it at the time when they needed to in a final. We've sort of been waiting for that moment to get that execution in the final for a few years. I'm sure there's been a few lines written about that over the last while with Leinster. so we're glad to come out on the positive side of one. So yeah, I was really impressed with them. Just from Jeff thankfully invites us on to review these games. You tend to try and learn as a fan or a coach. You're trying to learn what's the work in progress for Leinster. And if you look at the block of the last 3 games, you can see what we're trying to do and what we're trying to do, and it peaked at the right time, which is what you wanted to happen. So yeah, well done to Jacques Nienaber and Tyler Blainhall and Leo and etc. just for getting it right on the day. And the players, as I said, the execution was top class. Literally 40 out of 42 was a positive kick that I seen throughout the whole game. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not as if the Bulls weren't aware of that we were going to be going for that kind of kicking style. I mean, we all knew that the news about Gibson Park, dropping out on the day was a big loss. It was big, it was, he was a big part of our, especially our exit kicks. And I had a feeling, the first thought I had, what little I know about it, was that maybe especially on the restarts, they might target Luke. But then again, they probably knew that, if they did target Luke, he'd just ship it on to someone else who would be able to boost. So what they seemed to do on their first couple of kicks, they put it under our posts to Sam, and it would be Sam kicking. So if they had a decent chase, he'd be forced to kick straight away from deep. Now he still did pretty well on his clearance from there, but that in itself was an acknowledgement of our kicking game from the Bulls. I just thought that was interesting, but it was 42 kicks and then the restarts, and it was just. It was just very impressive all around. What did you think, Kino?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Leinster kicking game was on point, and it was interesting to try and contrast it with the Bulls, because I mean the Bulls have a very similar kind of kicking game plan. They kick to dominate territory. They were their intent was to test Leinster under the high ball and play the game in the right areas, because they rely so much on the strength of their scrum and line out. It's a strategy they've leaned on all season. Second highest team in the URC for kicks from hand, only behind Leinster. Given the weather as well, damp ball, misty air, slick surfaces, you could see the logic of it. You don't play too much rugby in your own half. You force errors from your opponent instead. And, so the plan wasn't flawed in theory. It just, on the day, it didn't translate into practice. Leinster were better at executing a very similar strategy on the day. For them, the real issue wasn't the volume of kicks, it was how poorly they were executed. Goosen overhit several kicks, meant to be contestable, but instead they sailed way too deep, allowing Leinster to call the mark or counter-attack or to return. Leroux's decision-making was, I think, to be nice about it, chaotic. He attempted chick kicks in and out of his own 22. None came off.
And at that early stage as well. I mean, there were only 2 tries down then, but still, it was really early.
Yeah, that one on 17 minutes straight to James Lowe, like literally into his breadbasket. You couldn't have done a kick pass better.
Yeah.
It was so close. It would have been a try. It was just the knock-on spared their blushes. they created very few structured kicking chains. Certainly that they came out of ahead of. Their efforts were kind of disjointed, and they kind of lacked the field coverage to recover when their kicks didn't stick. Early on, Leinster's back three at times looked a little bit shaky in the backfield. That spilled box kick by Lowe at 29 minutes, and the pressure kick out from Jimmy O'Brien. But then once they adjusted to that, like, they nullified everything Bulls threw at them. In terms of the roles, Goosen handled the long tactical stuff, the punts downfield, the crossfields, and the penalty touch finders. Some of it was decent, like the corner kick before halftime, but in open play, he just wasn't precise enough. LaRue was more creative, chip kicks, short crossfield efforts, angle grubbers, but none of them actually ended up coming off, and none of them caused us any trouble. Especially that second half effort, it was easily picked off by Prendergast, called the mark. Absolutely killed their momentum and killed them in our 22. Papier was arguably their most effective kicker on the day. His box kicks were well timed, and a few kind of in the 20 to 30 minute mark generally did test Lowe and O'Brien in the air. Kanan Moody chased well. He was key in creating a spill from Lowe 29 minutes, but the Bulls didn't recover the ball cleanly or build anything from it. So decent primary execution, but no follow through.
The only couple of times they got their kicking act together in the second half was when you mentioned, Jeff, about the restarts. They did sort of go down Tommy O'Brien's channel, and not so much was to get at Tommy, just to cause a little bit of confusion. And Gibson Park, that I think maybe Luke McGrath had gone at that stage, and it's just that exit where we use 9 a bit. They got 1 or 2. We got poor exits and the line outs maybe just outside our 22. But maybe that was just down to personnel change at that stage. You had a guy on who probably didn't know he was going to be on the 23, in fairness to him. But that was very minor. At that stage the game was won anyway, and it was too little too late for the Bulls.
Yeah, 19-0 down. They didn't adapt their kicking game at all. There was no shift to wider attack. No urgency to ask Leinster any questions with ball in hand. They became predictable in terms of the kicking game, and we weren't being manipulated. We were just being tested again in the same way that had already happened, and we'd already given them the answer. They played the game they played all season, and it got them to the final. Finals are about execution. Leinster didn't just survive that kicking game. They beat them at it. Leinster were kicking more accurate, chases better structured, returns were more dangerous. Bulls had the right idea, but they lost the kicking battle, and with it, they lost their biggest weapon.
Yeah, I mean, it's guys. We're recording this on the Sunday evening, and the contrast between our attitude, like talking about this game and watching the game on the Sunday, than it was when we were watching it live. Totally different story. I mean, at the time, watching it a second time, you can see how comfortable Leinster were even from those early stages. But I suppose, given recent history and all that kind of stuff, even 19-0 up, we weren't comfortable. And when we're saying once in a while we maybe made a wrong decision, did a kick pass when we should have, we shouldn't have, did a grubber when we shouldn't have. Different times, we were out cursing them. So why do they do that? But the reality is, it didn't cost us as much, and we weren't accounting for just what was going wrong on the other side as well. But a lot of what was going on their side was forced by us, by our accurate kicks and what you're saying. And it was just it's a totally different experience watching it the second time. But listen, great response from the followers and the viewers, and on the Facebook page we had one from Jackie McEachern who just basically said, brilliant team performance. So happy for everyone at Leinster Rugby. I hope they all thoroughly enjoy celebrating this, and that it can be the foundation that next season is built upon. But before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere, like our YouTube channel, where on Tuesday you'll find our bonus clip. And this week our panel is going to chat about Sam Prendergast's role in the final, as well as a review of Leinster's imports. To get access to our latest content, as well as our presence on the different social media channels, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. And as ever, please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. So now we turn to Keno's main topic, and we've already spoken about the kicking game from Leinster's back, so it's only good and proper that we now turn our attention to the forwards.
Yeah, I'm never backwards about talking about forwards. From the whistle that started this game, Leinster's forwards didn't just meet the Bulls, they overwhelmed them. It was physical, clinical, and above all, relentless. Like they won every key area: collisions, breakdowns, set piece, maul, tackles, and without kind of showing off about it, it was a very, very strong work ethic kind of performance. Final score aside, even it was a performance that got back to Leinster's core identity, not just being smart rugby, but tough rugby. In terms of carries, by 30 minutes in, we had 33 carries versus their 13. So that's not just tempo, that's a domination of momentum in that game. Conan's try 6 minutes in, straightforward carry off a maul recycle, nothing flashy, but he smashed through the defenders because he had support and a clean shape and came at it with momentum. Sheehan, typically mobile, multiple game line wins. That 21-minute break down the touchline gave us a 5-meter line out that led directly to Van der Fleer's try. Baird made over 40 metres off 10 carries, many in heavy traffic. Always over the gain line, always looking for work in the carry. McCarthy chipped in too. Probably his best carrying game I've seen so far. 9 carries, all in heavy traffic in the congested tunnels, and never took a step backwards. In total, Leinster had 90 carries to Bulls 106 by the end of the 80. But here's the key. Leinster made more post-contact metres, 250 versus 222, even though they had fewer carries. They consistently won the collision, even though lower volume. So it was 2.8 metres post-contact per carry as opposed to 2.1. So that's nearly 50% more metres post-contact per carry. So Bulls just couldn't deal with the physicality that Leinster brought in the day. They could read the play. Leinster's carriers won the collision pretty much every time. In terms of defensive output, Leinster made 126 tackles, 22 missed, so 85% completion rate. But as you know, with the Nienaber defensive system, completion rates tell you close to nothing about what's actually happening on the pitch. What would actually tell you something is that they conceded 0 line breaks while making 7 in that game. 0 line breaks against a side that's really handy with the ball in hand and their tight carry game and their power carry game. First half tackle counts, James Ryan made 11, Van der Fleer made 9, McCarthy made 8. That's just up to half time. Clarkson's hit on Coetzee 25 minutes in was absolute textbook. I loved his energy in this game. It was a low chop, reset the ruck, and absolutely sucked the energy out of a really important carrier for Bulls. And then in terms of defence, that 32 to 40 minute stand was just elite international class defence. Bulls had over 15 phases in the 22. Leinster conceded 0 points from that. And eventually forced that forward pass from Leroux, and the look on his face was priceless. I only got to see that on the replay rewatch, and I'm delighted I had something like that to look forward to. But anyway, McCarthy had 2 dominant tackles in that sequence alone. One on Van Staden, and that drove him back 3 meters. That's absolutely brilliant stuff. There was a time when you'd kind of hoped that Leinster would hold their own in defence and really make up for it in attack. Do you know what I mean? It's, they score 1, we score 1 more than them. But the transition to a defence-oriented team just seems to have peaked right at the right time for the URC. Ruck and breakdown work was excellent as well. Leinster lost 13 turnovers in total, but crucially only conceded 8 penalties, and that was really disciplined for a match at that level of physicality and ferocity. Porter and Van der Fleer led the charge on clearouts, keeping Bulls threats like Van Staden and Kirsten completely out of the breakdown picture. Didn't win any jackals, but I think that was by design. Didn't seem to be really we're going in for the jackal position to slow down opposition ball to harry and just wreck their rucks.
Yeah.
But weren't actually going for the steal because
they were more going for the sort of counter ruck shoves, sort of jamming at
absolutely
just to get in them,
And the barge was key as well.
Yeah.
But also knowing that Bulls have the kind of highest number of kicks per pass. That ratio is highest in all of the URC. That you don't have to get a turnover, because if you get them going past a second or third pass, they'll have kicked the ball back to you already.
Yeah.
They don't keep going through the phases. So yeah, when they had possession, our fringe defense kept its shape really, really well. It wasn't flashy, but it was incredibly effective over 80 minutes, kept width well, and we were able to do that as well because we weren't overcommitting to the rucks. And breakdown discipline was key. Only 2 breakdown penalties conceded by Leinster, and both in areas where it wasn't a direct concern to the scoreboard. So then the set piece, we were 8 for 9 on our own scrum, I think. It's 89%. The one we lost was fairly inconsequential. And we also took one against the head. And I think that might have only happened to them once. I think they're at something like 3% for conceding penalties on their own scrum for the season. First scrum of the match really set the tone for what followed. Clarkson did so well. Slipped his bind on the reset scrum, slipped his bind, recovered, and then beasted it. And won that penalty. And it just, his performance was outstanding. I mean, I know there's a number of them, but he, as a young player in a difficult position, just really stood out to my mind. Porter versus Lowe was another huge matchup, especially given that Lowe is like, I mean, Porter's no small guy, but Lowe, he has 20 kilos on Porter. The Porter won that fight. Oh, he absolutely, he drew him out where he needed to. They gave a free instead of a penalty when they reckoned they were going to chase it, and absolutely won that battle, painted the pictures well, maybe hit a couple of things quite nicely as well. But, that's all part and parcel of the game. The subs came on 55 minutes in there and abouts in the front row, Slimani and Callagher, and 58 minutes in, won another scrum penalty, which we took points from.
That was the one against the head. The Bulls had chosen to go for a scrum there.
Yeah. Thinking, they've got their subs
and
on.
And they weren't getting a nudge
Porter.
that time. We played them in Pretoria, and that's what happened there. We did okay in the scrums when we were on, but they started to really turn the screw in the second half, and it looked to be going that way this time.
Yeah. It was the second half. It was dropping off, and then we got to put the subs on, and we came right back up again.
Exactly,
it's absolutely beautiful.
That was probably one of the biggest cheers of the day. I think that penalty win.
Oh, absolutely. No, undoubtedly, I was there. It was certainly up there. And then the line out, 100% success on the line out. No wobbles, no overthrows. Really nice variation on where it was going. The distribution from the middle back was excellent, and it just nailed it all day. And 2 tries directly off of line out. 6-minute try was off the maul, a maul stall, and the 22-minute was a maul drive with Van der Fleer just charging through the gap that opened in the middle of it. Now, you can't talk about the line out without talking about Baird either. He disrupted or stole 3 of Bull's throws. And Visa going off, obviously, with a head injury didn't help them with that. But he was an absolute pest again in the line out. If he keeps going like he is, you'd be very hopeful for where he could end up, to be honest. He's really fulfilling the potential that we all saw in him for quite a while now. Bench was great as well. Bench forwards, Snyman came on at 41 minutes because James Ryan was absolutely destroyed. He had left it all out there in the first half. He absolutely emptied it. And most of the Bulls team at the same time. So Snyman came on 41 minutes, 5 carries for 21 metres, and really helped kind of continue that line out prophecy. His counter rock after 55 minutes in, just flipped the momentum just as Bulls were kind of getting a bit of momentum in there in the game after they'd scored their try. Slimani came on, 100% scrum success, drew a penalty, made 6 tackles in 25 minutes. Just exactly what you want for a prop coming on is to lock it out completely, just to see out the scrum, and he did much more than that. Keller came on and mobile, made a key decision 60 minutes into tap and go quickly. So yeah, intent was there, energy levels were good, everyone was on everyone was on song. I think 8 forwards played at least 35 minutes apiece. And like the transitions between the bench players and the starting players were seamless. So kind of to sum it, like, it was a full spectrum performance from the Leinster forwards. They were physical, they were structured, they were intelligent, and they were reckless. It wasn't just about big moments, it was about winning literally every phase, every meter, every contact, every set piece. 2.8 meters post contact per carry, 8 penalties conceded, 2 turnovers won by Bulls, and they only scored 1 try off the back. 100% line out success. Only 1 scrum of ours given away, 0 line breaks conceded. Bulls came in as the URC's most physical side, and they got out-carried, out-tackled, out-mauled, and out-scrummaged. And this was Leinster reminding everyone, when they execute like this, nobody can live with them up front.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we were told. When the South Africans joined the competition, I mean, Leinster had been winning it, I think, 4 years in a row. And we were told, well, that's not much of a challenge. You're not going up against, and when we weren't doing well in Europe at the time, well, that's because we're not used to going up against physical sides. So when the South Africans come into the league, it might get us to learn to front up. And it took us a few years, but what we saw on Saturday. Now, to be fair, this kind of performance we've been seeing throughout the season. The Leinster won their first 12, 13 games in the league. They were winning week out. They're winning impressively. They're winning with impressive defensive stands right up to the end. They were playing physically. But of course, we had that sort of monkey on our back about the knockout game, so we needed to bring that to this game, and we did it. This was the culmination of Leinster achieving what we were supposed to be achieving if we were going to succeed in a league, especially when the South Africans came in. We had a South African team that was known for scrummaging. We would have been happy with at least parodying the scrums, but we were winning them on their put-ins as well, and rightly so. And Porter and Carson were getting pissed off at the ones they lost as well. They were getting up and they were furious. It wasn't like they tell the ref I was driving straight, and they were doing all that as well, So it was a good performance all round from the forwards, and discipline wise as well. That opening try as well, they got some help from the backs as well. A brilliant clear out from Tommy O'Brien. Was it on Grobler? He just completely took him out. It looked like a total set play that they all were meant to do it, and he just grabbed the hook and threw him aside and made the space. It was really good. What did you make of it, Tom?
Yeah, I think both of you have summed it up perfectly, and I suppose just to add even a little bit of extra context to Keane's great summary there about how aggressive our defence was. The Bulls come into this game averaging 4 meters per carry, and Leinster cut that in half, if not by more. That was for the whole season. That's every single carry they were carrying, averaging 4 meters. So it just shows you Leinster's game plan, and that takes technique. It takes fight and heart, and all those things you need from a rugby player. Leinster ticked the box the weekend. In some ways their manhood was questioned after the Saints game, and it's funny, this team has just been so consistent. It's so consistent. It's like 3 defeats in 28 games now this season. It's a ridiculous accusation to throw at a rugby team that wins that amount of games, and it have been doing that for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Just marvelous consistency. Yes, the couple of inches that we've missed out in the last few years in the big Heineken Cup finals, but it was never from the want of a heart and the want to fight. And I think Leinster just wanted to underline that the weekend. So as Keane says, when we play that game, we're very, very difficult to beat up front or anywhere across the park. So we completely nullified the Bulls' carrying game. It was non-existent. Let's call a spade a spade. They got nothing off it. They were narrow. We forced them back into tackle. As Keane mentioned, those 2 defensive stands from about 34 or 5 minutes on towards half time. an instance they were back 1 meter from the line and then end up 9 meters back, and just some really aggressive double tackled, and as Keano rightly pointed out, we weren't necessarily attacking the ruck for turnovers in the sort of traditional way. We're forcing an error and forcing them back. And at the end of the day, if you're a rugby team, you keep going back. Everybody has to realign behind the ball. That's the offside line. So it's just that little bit more difficult to get execution as well. And then you get errors like Willie LaRue's forward pass just before half time, because everything has come back 6, 7, 8 meters after a carry. So yeah, really fronted up, and you could see the fight and the desire from the likes of Porter. Thomas Clarkson, as I said, 100% deserves a mention. Just what a season he's had. And with a lot of online stuff, there's a lot of revision post fact about the Bulls were poor or whatever the case may be. There's no revision of that Bulls pack or that Bulls scrum. That is still one of the best scrums in world rugby, if not the best at club rugby, I should say. It'd match any of the big physical French teams, and Wilco Lowe, absolutely formed tight head scrummager probably in the world this season, absolute beast. And we nullified him, and that was a lot. I spoke earlier about targeting their strengths, and that's something Leinster decided to do, was go after one of their main key strengths, take it away from him, and they had really no plan B or plan C after that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great performance all around from start to finish. And like I said, again, the fans did appreciate it. Kevin Callahan said on our Facebook page, great atmosphere in Croker from about 30 minutes before the kickoff. Hat tip to the support in the hill. They were so vocal. The defensive set for 5 minutes before halftime was what won the game. Bulls threw everything they had at Leinster, recycling clinically, but there was no way through. Now, do you agree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? But check out our Facebook pages after the full-time whistle of Leinster and Ireland and Lions test matches, and be sure to leave your thoughts. Well, this is where I usually harp on other results from the URC, but what with Saturday's match being the grand final and all, there were, of course, no other results. However, I can give a quick shout out to former Leinster Locks Ross Maloney and Quinn Rue, who picked up Premiership winners' medals as Bath just about held out Michael Cheika's Leicester Tigers at Twickenham. But that's more than enough about rugby elsewhere. Going back to our feature match, for now, the lads are going to go quickly over some more topics we found from Saturday, starting with Tom, who's going to look at the part the Vodacom Bulls played in Saturday's proceedings.
Yeah, look, I won't harp on too much about this, because at the end of the day, I've done too many of these pods on final days where we've come out on the wrong side. So this will be a very short analysis of my viewing of the Bulls. I wasn't too bothered about it in a wet Crow Park on Saturday, but on rewatch late last night when I came in and a bit today, I just thought I'd harp on about it. Yeah, look, the Bulls will be kicking themselves on their tactics. I'm not gonna focus on it. We've spoken about their scrum and so how we took that strength away from them and took away the carrying. I just had focus in one tactic that was baffling to me. The Bulls, they just got one out runners. It was like 2008 once the rugby back. I didn't understand how it was just one out runners, very very little latchers on it, and Leinster was so on point with defence that you needed a lot more than that to break down the Leinster defence. Literally, it was coming from the base of the ruck. It was slow a lot of the times, as Keane pointed out in the last segment. We were trying to tackle and power through the ruck, not necessarily to steal, but to disrupt and make it really messy ball. There was a lot of times during the game where the Bulls were very frustrated. They'd throw a little frustrated arm at the prone Leinster player at the back of the ruck because they've just made a freaking mess of the ruck. And that's okay. That's rugby. I don't mind that. It's not a dirty hit. It's just frustration. But Bulls continued just one out runners, and if you look back at the game, especially those two phases before half time, just very poor execution by the Bulls. There was no nuance to it. There was no variety. I'll touch on Sam's performance in the game later, but with Sam stationed at the 13 channel, and not once did they try to get out there at times. Even they nearly went to that plan of going wide because nothing else worked. As Keane pointed out, there was the couple of Willie's crossfield kicks that were nearly. Sometimes when planned crossfield kicks come in, you can see the shape of the defence and they're going to do it. The Bulls, every time they did it, it was like because they had nothing else to do. it was like, right, I'm just going to do this. So they weren't really thinking 2-3 phases ahead. I genuinely thought, looking back, that they literally thought they would get dominance at the gain line, and therefore we don't have to worry about plan B and plan C. And they've gotten away with that a lot this season. Strangely enough, not much in the Heineken Cup, because they had a poor Heineken Cup, but in the URC, they just sort of dominate the gain line, and then we worry about it after that. So it smacks of a little bit of arrogance, maybe from Jake White and the coaching team. Let's call a spade a spade. If it was the other way around, and it was my team that did that and we lost, I'd be freaking fuming. I'd be looking at that game, pulling my hair out, going, "What the hell are we doing?" Just going one out runners, and really falling into the defensive trap that Leinster did. So yeah, very poor by Bull in that area of the field. But a lot of it came from what Leinster's pressure was on them. But yeah, they just looked like a team that hadn't practiced for a while. It was a bit of a shock that they were losing the gain line, and rabbit in the headlights after that. So yeah, there's a bit of naivety, maybe is a kinder word, but arrogance is probably the right word, because that's just bad planning, really. And the Bulls didn't look like they had plan B after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they could have also bet the farm on their scrum as well, being so dominant that they would always be. They get into our 22 somehow, and maybe the one out runners would work from there. But it was baffling. But I think a lot of it, we said it earlier that I think we kind of forced them into a lot of those mistakes, and a lot of those we had some plays where, like I said, Sam threw a looping pass that didn't seem to make a lot of sense. But there's a difference between that and some of the ones that they did, because theirs was, you could see it was just out of desperation. They were getting nowhere with their attacks, and they just try passes and kick passes and extraordinary things that were really extraordinary because they made no sense in that situation. But it deserves to be said that, this was the first time in the URC that 1v2 played in the final. And I think that these two teams deserve to be there. I think that these were the best two teams in the league. They've had another good year, and I think next year they're going to take up the mantle, or they would have already had it. The mantle we had. It's like, geez, lads, we're a really good side. It's about time we won this thing, and they're going to be carrying that with them this next season. So hopefully, they will be back again, but it was just a shame. The one thing I will say, we were concerned about their discipline on the day. It didn't cost them as much as we thought it would, but there was that incident on Joe McCarthy in the first half, which I just thought was unusual. Their center, there was already handbags first, then they went to the ground, and as he was getting up, he was doing something. There's something going on there, and the referee said, "I
can't quite put my thumb on it."
Exactly. He actually said, now, for head collisions, they say, play it at full speed and you get the good idea. That makes sense. In this case, I don't think the full speed really tells you the picture. I think it's the slowed up speed shows you what he did, and he seemed to do it. I'm not necessarily, maybe it's not a red card, but interesting to see if there's a sighting that comes from it. That's what I'm saying. But it was that was one aspect. Mostly, for most of the game, it was okay. Okay enough discipline wise. It was just out tactic, like you said. Okay, listen, we're gonna go back to Keno now, who'd like to harp on the way Leinster handled the challenging conditions on the day.
Yeah. Challenging is right. First of all, you can look at the number of players that were missing off of Leinster's quote unquote firsts. You could start with the superstar from New Zealand, Barrett, at 12, in for Henshaw, who's injured, and unfortunately missing for the rest of the season from when he was injured. And Barrett had an amazing game in a wet weather game. He's a big, strong dude who has an incredible skill range and speed. Like, he is close to a complete footballer in terms of rugby. His tactical kicking game as well was brilliant. It was ideal to have him inside of Sam when you're trying to play for territory and control. Just give him that stability and a bit of cover. Jimmy O'Brien filling in at fullback for injured Hugo Keenan. Tough conditions underfoot, and the Bull's game plan was to pepper us with kicks in the backfield as much as possible and hope that we'd make an error. And he was as secure under the high ball as anything and picked really good running lines on the counter. And then Luke McGrine for late injury, Gibson Park, could have been a disruption, could have sunk us, but it actually worked out really well. Luke had an amazing game. His tempo was steady. All of his kicks were on the money, bar that one early clearance straight into touch. And given the conditions, it was a really impressive display from him. Especially from a player I was worried about by the end of last season. He's really, really turned around this season, and I'm immensely impressed by what he's done. And then with the injury to Caelan Doris, Ryan Barrett at blindside would have been seen as a really, really big call earlier in the season because he was struggling to make a consistent impact on the team. But now it seems inspired. Like, he got rid of that scrum cap, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's a Samson-esque, the hair is loose, but especially these last 2 weeks, he has been everywhere. Stealing lineouts, smashing tackles, making meters. He has deserved both of those player of the matches in a row, and then some. Absolutely incredible for a guy filling in. In terms of the wet weather, the game plan we had worked really well right from the first whistle. We were playing for field position. Weren't trying to outflare them. Wanted to pin them back, force mistakes, play them in the right areas. Prendergast and Barrett were both launching long kicks to the corners early on, and you could see the Bulls getting turned, struggling to get set on a very greasy surface. That McGrath dink for Barrett's try 13 minutes is a great example of adapting to those conditions. Short kick over the line when defenders were flat, trusting Barrett to chase and finish on a skid heavy surface. And the kicking wasn't just for territory. We used it really effectively to just create absolute chaos amongst the Bulls players. High contestables gave Tommy O'Brien and Jimmy O'Brien chances to challenge. Even if they didn't regather, they often pressured the Bulls into really sloppy exits, and there were a lot of them. On attack, we kept it mostly fairly tight. It was mostly short passes, which was, again, perfect for the day that was in it, and really kept it not expansive in our own half, especially. And when we did, it was pod carries, clean ruck, rinse, repeat. We did go wide. It was with clear intent and structure after we had compacted their line, and they actually did defend quite narrow for a lot of the game. You only have to look at the error count to see how well drilled Leinster were on the day. Very few handling errors on a wet day, especially in the first 30 minutes when the ball was slickest and the rain was heaviest. And you didn't always see it on the telly, but it was bucketing down. I had a crying nephew in the stands, a couple of rows down from me. At the breakdown, again, the accuracy was spot on. Not just avoiding penalties, but absolutely consistently winning clean ball for ourselves. And that gave Prendergast a platform to control the tempo from 10 and McGrath from 9. When the Bulls did have the purple patch between 30 minutes and half time, and then again on the try 50, didn't lose the heads, absorbed the pressure, made the tackles, and came out the other side without panicking. Even when Prendergast missed a kick, 63, didn't go passive, kept playing territory, kept squeezing. It was cold, clinical, heartless rugby, which I absolutely loved the hell out of. It was a masterclass in wet weather execution.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier how we were nervous on the day anyway, talking about the Bull scrum, talking about, maybe what if Leinster didn't execute, all these different worries, and natural worries for any fan, especially on the day of a final. But then it rained and rained and rained, and we saw the forecast and all, and that made it even worse. We thought there'd be more scrums and more chances for the Bulls to exert their authority and stuff and whatever superiority. But luckily, it was just us, the fans, having that anxiety. The players just adapted and they executed and they got the job done. And that's all that matters, really. Nothing about our worries are going to change the scoreboard. They're the ones who went out and did it, and fair play. And for that try, you mentioned that Barrett try. I mean, time stood still when he kicked it through the second time. Two of them chasing. Now when the ball was headed, there was two of them going for it, and it could have gone either way. One of them was going to score. Brilliantly planned try. Ended up going Geordie's way, and he just and it got to the line before he got there as well, which was key. It just got over the line.
And I love that Tommy was there
Yes.
to immediately celebrate with him, because their bromance is a
Oh, big
beautiful,
time.
beautiful thing.
Big time.
Like I want an invite to the wedding. That's what I'm saying.
I saw stages where he was actively, I think he did one pass over the top where he was just trying to get Tommy into the game, because, you know, you could say part of that clear out, it was one of Tommy's quieter games for Leinster.
Yeah.
Still good. He's still,
Yeah.
he's that 14 jersey is his. There's no doubt about that now. But yeah, it's definitely a bromance. All right. Well, listen, lads, we're going to leave it there for now. This is where I say thanks to both Tom and Keno, but awesome harping as ever. But for now, since it's our last kind of wrap pod of the season, I'd like to thank the lads, all of the lads who have helped me throughout the season. Hugo Gordon, David Cordial, Jay Long, Kieran Duffy, Mark Jackson, Rich Mifsud, Connor Cronin, and of course, Neil Keegan on the weekly preview shows. These have been long, lean years for Leinster Rugby since we switched to the pod format, but you've all stuck with it regardless. True Leinster fans all, you've been truly rewarded on Saturday. Thank you all so much. I very much look forward to harping some more with you down the line. Cheers, guys. Thanks a million.
Long. Jeff.
Well, as for our next batch of harping, we will have our 80-plus column posting on Wednesday, and then we're going to change things up a bit for the Lions Tour. More news on that to come. Please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.